Host your Evergreen webinar. Now that you have your Evergreen webinar recorded, you need to set up the tech to host it that is accessible and easy for your leads to consume. You have two main options when it comes to how to deliver your Evergreen webinar: Evergreen webinar software and self-hosting. Evergreen webinars option 1, using a webinar software. The first option with hosting an Evergreen webinar is that you use a software specifically meant for this. There are two main options: Evergreen Webinar and Easy Webinar. The advantages: a more formal webinar feel to your funnel. This looks and acts like a traditional webinar with choosing a date and time, experiencing the class, and a webinar style room. In my experience, people are more likely to watch because they have signed up for something and it feels like a more formal workshop. Ability to send warming emails before the webinar to get people excited about coming and building the anticipation usually means higher show-up rates. Better analytics of how many people come, how long they stayed in the webinar room, etc., so that you can improve your webinar. The disadvantages: more costly as you need to pay for the software. Not quite as on-demand as video embed on a landing page. People need to wait for the webinar time to arrive to get the email to join with the link, etc. Evergreen Webinar Option 2, Self-Hosted. If you want to skip the Evergreen Webinar software altogether, then the alternative option is to host your webinar on a landing page. The idea is that you build out a landing page using software like Leadpages or your own website, WordPress, to show it, and then embed your recorded webinar recording onto that page. You remove the need for your leads to pick a date, time, and instead, once they sign up for your webinar, they are taken straight to the page where you have your webinar hosted. Advantages: no additional cost, skip the date and time element of your Evergreen webinar software, faster for the lead to watch and consume the webinar. Disadvantages: less data and metrics on things like show-up rate, how long people stayed on the webinar, etc. Less formal feel of the webinar, potentially a lower watch rate. The verdict: I've tested both options, and while they both have converted for me, when I have hosted on EverWebinar, my conversion rates have consistently been about 1 to 2% higher than hosting on a landing page alone.